issue that we're all familiar with. We're part of a very rapidly changing, complex world that we're handing over to what we call Generation Y, which is the millennial generation, those between born after 1980 to 2000. And this is a generation that we talk about being very confident, increasingly liberal, open-minded, supportive of gay rights, minorities. And yet, there is also an increasing fragility about this generation. We seem to be countering an increasing number of young people battling depression, suicide, substance abuse. I mean, I'm kind of trying to simplify it because it's really a very fragmented, complex canvas that we're looking at. I want to thank my fellow panelists here. This is Arjun Nath, Dr. Shelja Sen. Arjun is a corporate lawyer who gave up his practice 9 years ago. He's a full-time, we've been joking about this.
We practiced this.
This is what we've rehearsed. He's a full-time recovering heroin addict and a full-time author. And Dr. Shelja Sen is a child psychologist and a family therapist. So I'm going to ask Arjun. He's written this very gripping, raw story about his story back to rehabilitation. And it wasn't an easy journey. It was as agonizing as his journey into hell as getting out of it. Arjun, your book starts, I mean, it's a very interesting blurb that he's got. He says, a story of heartbreak, hard drugs, and hope. And really, I would actually recommend this book for each one of you to read because you might not be going through this journey, but it gives you such a deep sense of insight as to what people around you, and I'm not talking about just people into substance abuse, any kind of addiction, what they go through. Wow, okay, that's agreeing with us. All right, so the book starts with Arjun in the car going with his father to the Nth Rehab Center, and his father trying to be supportive, but they're both nervous as hell because we were briefly talking, we need to speak about caregivers also, what they go through. But I'm going to ask Arjun to just read a short excerpt of what he's going through as he's sitting next to his father, pretending to be asleep because he does not want to engage in this conversation, where his father's trying to be supportive, but they're both nervous. Arjun, can I request you to begin with, yeah, do you want to give us a brief background about this?
Background, I was actually going to just sort of plug the book, but
okay.
You seem to have done my job for me. This is, you know, I don't know how many of you have personally or have known people who've gone through substance abuse, the agony of withdrawal. So this particular passage, which Puneeta and I talked about, is that. It's a period of withdrawal from the drug, from the substance that you crave. And just, you know, some images that might interest you, you know, to want something that badly, to want something that hurts you that much. Take all the times you ever craved anything. Chocolate cake, sex, a pair of Manolo Blahnik pumps, a highway washroom to empty your bladder in, whatever. Add them up, multiply that feeling by 200, and maybe you come a little nearer to understanding my need for a chemical fix. It approximates hunger, if only because of the hole that gapes open in the middle, just below where my heart used to be. I would do anything to fill that hole, cram every expired fermented thing from the kitchen into my mouth, lick the plaster off walls, stuff my nostrils with kerosene-soaked rags, swallow Lysol, sniff paint remover, eat clay, chew glass, bite chalk, bite raw red meat, bite it, bite it. Grinding my teeth, I must have bitten into tongue or cheek because the taste of blood fills my mouth. The taxi has stopped in front of 10-foot-high iron gates painted silver. A stone wall topped with loops of barbed wire run on either side of the gates. Pa looks at me. The only condition I had when agreeing to come to this rehab was that I shouldn't be able to see a stitch of barbed wire anywhere. Well, champ, here we are. Doesn't look very promising, does it? Are you okay? He's worried I'll run. I've run before from other rehabs surrounded by barbed wire. I'm too tired to tell him that I'm tired, of trying to fill a bottomless hole, of being asked why and never having an answer. I'm tired of waking up every morning and wishing I hadn't. I'm tired of running. The driver leans on the horn and the gates open inward as by magic. If someone on the other side pulled them open, they are hidden in the shadows. As we drive through, I see a granite plaque embedded in the gatepost. Etched on it in unassuming letters, our sacred land. I am too tired to even roll my eyes. I cannot breathe.
So Arjun reached this rehab center called The Land, and was it just land? The sacred land, okay.
Land, yeah.
And that is actually the beginning of a completely different journey into rehab. You have, you've called him yourself a maverick doctor who has gone through many incarnations from being Yusuf to Ismail to Bhai to Doc,
yeah.
right? Arjun, do you want to just tell us what was so different about this rehab, you know, and a little insight about the other inmates, you know, were they your fellow peers, were they younger, you know, just give us a little glimpse into the land and what was the process that was so different from the other rehabs?
Right, well, Land was obviously, I mean, it is the first rehabilitation center for a lot of people, but for me it wasn't, it was my fourth. And, you know, I went there for loads of reasons, I think primarily just being exhaustion, you know, I was so fed up. My family was fed up, I'd lost all my friends, and it just seemed like there was no place else to go. So that's why I agreed, I had no idea what Land was about. This is it's a facility outside Bombay, maybe a 2 hours drive outside Bombay. And my experience of rehabilitation centers obviously is you know, in major city centers, you know, in Bangalore and Delhi, where typically the first thing that strikes you is that it's a facility. You know, it's a gray concrete building. There's very little open space. You're assigned a room, and that's primarily, you know, the location where you're situated for the next weeks or months. Land was immediately different. There was a sense of openness. You didn't feel suffocated. There was, you know, it's maybe a two-acre property. There's open air. There's greenery. When you go in there, there's about, you know, at any given point in time, there's about 25, 30 people, and it doesn't feel as if there are people who are miserable over there, you know, having to be there, being involuntarily put there by their fed-up parents or, you know, their spouses. It seemed like there were people there who were happy to be there. There was no place else they'd rather be, you know, and this was an absolute revelation. I mean, we're talking about a rehab in India.
Right.
It was like happy camp. Everyone's walking around smoking cigarettes. There's music blasting from somewhere. People are working out. And I admit, you know, not at first, but within a very short time, you actually want to be there. You enjoy it so much. And moving on to, yeah.
No, I would, and yet it had its structure and its rules and its housemaster.
That's right, that's right.
It wasn't such a happy camp. I mean, one would say, oh, I'm going to get there and just chill. But you still had your structure within that.
Yes, no, absolutely. But it seemed to, okay, fine. So here's a dream that I've had since I was quite young, is that the whole nuclear family, joint family thing, it doesn't seem to work. I mean, I'm just saying from observation, it doesn't seem to be, you know, a happy structure. When you go to Land and you spend some time there, it feels like an experiment that's working. A social experiment where, you know, you have communal living. You have people who are joined together by this theme of wanting to get better, to improve themselves, to be the best possible versions of themselves. And you're living together, you're eating together, you know, you're not sleeping together, but you guys know what I mean. You're sleeping, you know, nearby each other. And,
but you're there for each other, you're supporting each other.
Right, right. So it seems like maybe a family of 4 members or 8 doesn't work, but 30 together seems to work really well.
And when one is ready to leave and get back to the world, there's a collective celebration.
Right.
You rejoice in the other one's happiness.
Right. And this was, I mean, the primary difference between rehabilitation centers and, you know, others and Land is that we are strongly discouraged from maintaining those friendships that you form at rehabs other than land after the program is over. They say that those friendships last only till the gates, and then after that you must not be in touch with each other because you're equally weak and there's a chance of, you know, you sort of slipping back together. Whereas at land, it's completely the opposite. You derive your strength and your joy from being with people that you lived with, and, you know, sort of you recover together.
Great.
Which is fantastic.
Shelja, I'm going to bring you in here with both your hats, that of a psychologist and therapist and a parent, right? So first, I mean, as a psychologist, over the years of your practice, does it look like that there's an increasing number of young people coming in with issues of anxiety, depression, not being able to cope, alienation, isolation?
There is definitely. I'm not going to go into statistics of it, but you know, I think it's very important to understand that rather than seeing anxiety as a disorder or an illness, I would say it's in some way a very universal human condition. You know, who doesn't feel anxiety?
Right.
All of us feel anxiety. I think there's an undertone of anxiety everybody goes through. It's being on the edge.
Right.
It's something that I think everybody goes through. And I think right now, I've been in this profession now, I think almost 30 years now, and I do see that anxiety is increasing, and there's so many reasons for that. I mean, stepping back, I would say that even you see in evolutionary terms, anxiety was something to keep us safe. If you see in terms of the way our brain's wired, when you are out hunting, gathering, battling the elements or the predators, you needed your limbic system, the amygdala, that part of our brain, where there would be some kind of a danger out there, and there would be an alarm, and you would be like fight, flight, freeze. However, the predators, they might not be like when you're walking down, there might not be any predators, but the sense of uncertainty, the unpredictability of the environment, you know, that has changed. There could be a person who's more like there's genetically predisposed to anxiety.
Okay.
You know, if there's a parent or family, somebody in the family who has anxiety, more responds to situations with stronger level of anxiety, I might be more prone to being more anxious. However, along with that, I think we are living in a world where there is a high level of uncertainty. There is no doubt about that. There is a change is constant. Just before this session, I attended this wonderful session by Piku Iyer on art of stillness, and I loved that session. And I think what he was talking about made so much of sense, that we're living in a world where change is happening. The choices are so immense. Like even for me, for all of you here, when you're here in the Jaipur,
the festival,
and the kind of anxiety, which session to attend?
Because what am I
going to miss out? You know, young people talk about FOMO. You know what FOMO stands for? Fear of missing out.
Right.
That's a big thing. You know, if I'm sitting here, am I missing out? I'm sure some of you might be thinking, is it really worth it walking all the way here and sitting for this session? I might be better off somewhere else.
Yeah.
So anxiety is an undertone of everything we do. And not only that, I mean, think about it, we are connected. We are connected 24/7. Like this young person, I'm a child and adolescent psychologist, therapist, I work with young people. And this young person made a very apt comment. He said that when you were in school, you would have a fight, and then for next so many hours, nobody would talk about it. Next day, you would go back and reconnect with that friend, it's forgotten.
Right.
But now you have a fight, it's on all WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and it's been analyzed. By the time you go next day, it's kind of blown out of proportion. And that's what we are. We go to sleep with our gadgets. We get up in the morning, first thing we do is look at our gadgets. And that is creating so much of sense of, we are constantly on the alert. There's no time where child or young people, or all of us, forget about it. I hate saying young people because all of us, because young people are just our scapegoats. We say, oh, look at these young people.
Right.
But we are doing it all the time. We are doing it all the time, and that's what's leading to this huge level of anxiety that we are facing.
Arjun, how do you relate to that? I mean, Do you feel more pressure as a millennial or a young person, as she says? And is the expectation more?
I think what tends to happen is, of course, I'm actually sitting over here and battling severe social anxiety. No reflection on you guys. It's just something that I face. Shelja also, we're both quite similar that way. But the sort of
you're fearing being judged.
Now, can I just come in here? I think what really is here is that in some way, there might be a social anxiety that all of us face. I think some of us are introverts. Especially writers are more introverted, I like to think. And for us to be out there, it becomes a second, pseudo self of ours that we present to the world. But there is a part of us which, this kind of a thing, having interaction is very anxiety provoking.
Right. Yeah. But the kind of crippling, very debilitating sense of anxiety that I have friends at LAND particularly. I think there's about the profile of people that the patients, the inmates that are there right now is changing. There was when I was there maybe 8 years ago, and before that, maybe 90% of the people there were on Class A drugs, and that's why they were there. That was their
what
recovery
would Class
agenda.
A drugs be? The hardest drugs?
Yeah, heroin, cocaine.
Okay.
But now what seems to be happening is that maybe 60 or even 70% of the people there, their primary reason for being at LAND is not substance abuse.
Okay.
It is this sort of crippling anxiety, and I know you don't like the word disorder, but I have very limited vocabulary, so I'm just going to say that. That sort of disorder where you have, multiple panic attacks during the day. It's generalized. This is not as a result of necessarily of trauma or of dread of some impending event like bankruptcy or something ghastly. It's not something that they can point a finger at and say, this is why I'm hyperventilating and I'm sweating and my heart is popping out of my chest. And I think it's really hard for people who haven't been there to understand that. Just like with substance abuse, it's really hard to say, the tendency is to say, just get over it, it's nothing, or dismiss
willpower.
it. Right, just, so I was doing some research before I came to Jaipur, and I went to what I think is a major resource for professionals as well. It's the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Which is quite a bleak name, I thought, for most things. I was scrolling through their website, there was a lot of resources, tools. Top 10 things to do if you're suffering from anxiety. And it was like one of those clickbait articles, number 3 and 4 will blow your mind. Number 3 was eat well-balanced meals. Number 4 was do your best. Now I'm thinking, 100 years of research into something so crippling,
come up with this.
You come up with something that my mother tells me every day. Just do your best. I mean, really, it's shocking.
Arjun, can I ask you personally, you are a good-looking, intelligent, successful, successful, yes, very successful, in my eyes, okay?
I must have done something right. I'm not sure.
What actually propelled you into, how did you slide into heroin? Well, it started with
smoothly.
Smoothly? No, but then what happened? Your journey into, because I want young people to try and understand.
Right.
The whole idea is to look at the macro out of this,
Yeah.
And in your sharing, I'm sure there's a lot that they will get out of it also.
Sure. I think at 17, I was, I don't know if anyone at 17 can be called normal, but I was as normal as most people can be. I think one of my motivations for getting high during those days was quite simply to belong. I think everybody, I'm not saying anything that's wildly original. You want a club, a group, a place where you can belong, a set of people. I clearly didn't belong in the library or those idiots on the basketball court. You know, I belonged on some terrace smoking weed. And that sense of just being with a few people who are doing the same thing and listening to the same kind of music and saying the same kind of rubbish, basically, seemed to be like my niche. I really sort of
felt you belonged, and that
I felt safe. I felt safe there. Over the years, it changed, I think. You know, you grow older, you look at people around you, and you sort of figure out that life is about, there's fulfilling desires, you know, so there's a number of them, there's about 15 of them. The desire to have a life partner, to have a family, to be successful at work, whatever your chosen career might be. I don't know, to pay your taxes, do all these number of things that seem to be what adults do. And I didn't want any of it. So I think in my mind, what I did was I replaced all those 15 desires with just one.
Which was?
Which was drugs. You take drugs and all of your needs are fulfilled. You don't have to go chasing after sex and food and money. You just go chasing after, you know, smack or heroin. And once you have that, then you're sorted, you know.
Floating in your own world.
Yeah, it was like a one-stop shop, like a little supermarket for the soul. And it was just convenient, you know. It just seemed, why juggle all these 50,000 things? It's just a little nice little cocoon.
In fact, you used
It was
this
very
line,
tempting.
which I remember. The
Simplified
scary
life.
thing about heroin is not what she does to you, but it's what she doesn't.
She doesn't, right.
Yeah? So what did you mean by that? Was it
But you know,
shutting down? It's sort of your
I've
brain is shutting down and you don't
No,
know
no,
where
not at all. I've spoken to friends of mine, you know, who smoke pot occasionally, they drink occasionally, like I'm guessing a lot of us. And I asked them, I said, you know, what about experimenting with other stuff? I felt I was pretty hardcore and, you know, like a dangerous.
There,
I was like that. So I used to ask them, you know, how come you don't want to try other things? And there was this fear, this sense of there's a line, there's a boundary beyond which if you go, then you'll be lost forever. I never seem to, I don't know, I never seem to have that line, or at least I expected that the first time I crossed that line into doing, you know, harder substances, that something would happen. There would be a sign from God, or, you know, the police would come breaking in the door.
In fact, the dealer didn't want to give you the drug, right?
Right, he said
what
this
was
is...
his name? Angel. Did you call him Angel?
Yeah, I called him my angel, but his name was Ali.
Okay, yeah.
And he was, you know, he had a conscience. He didn't think that this was for me, and he refused to sell me for 7 days. Anyway, but that's, you know, that's Ali.
Yeah, yeah.
He's sadly passed away now. But yeah, so what I was saying was that there is something that you expect should happen, something bad, something terrible, some sign, some warning that this is not the route you are supposed to take, but there was nothing like that, you know. The first time you take it, it's fantastic. It's, and that's the dangerous thing, that's the scary thing, is that if you try it and you enjoy it, then why would you ever stop?
Okay. Shelja, you were talking about, you know, that the challenges are much more now. I mean, when we were growing up, we also went through challenges, right? What were our let's come to parenting. You know, we keep talking about new age parenting, and in fact, I have to share this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been going through the Kindle version. I think it's a beautiful book Shelja's come out with. All You Need Is Love, The Art of Mindful Parenting. Did you release this last year?
This is, yeah, this was 2 years back.
2 years ago.
This is
okay, and there's another one called Imagine, No Child Left Invisible. But okay, to get back to the parenting bit, Shelja, what's changed? I mean, you know, there's these huge sort of ideas of new age parenting. All of us tell our children, you know, you're really special. You know, the world is out there for you too. You know, the world's your oyster. Is it in a way kind of, I mean, is our parenting putting them at a disadvantage?
Well, you know, when Arjun was talking about that lists that he came across in this Association of Anxiety and Depression, he came to do your best. I was just thinking, if I was told do your best, actually it makes me feel anxious. That gives me a strong sense of what is that best, right? And I think somewhere, if I talk as a parent or as a therapist that works with parents, I think there is a huge sense of confusion and judgment and shame that parents feel, that I'm not doing good enough, I'm not best enough. There is a kind of a benchmark there as a parent that you are not reaching.
Are you talking about parents generally, or if their kid is into substance abuse?
I think
generally.
Parents in general. Parents in general, I think there is a feeling that I'm not doing good enough, I'm not, and there's a high level of judgment associated with parenting. I think much more now than there was earlier. Right. And that creates, I feel a strong sense of inadequacy as parent, and I feel very judged. And how do I cope with it? What we do with our wounds when we are growing up, what do we do with our wounds, my sense of inadequacy, my sense of shame as a human being is pass it on to my child. I'm not good enough, that means you're not good enough. Or for me to feel good enough, you have to reach that level. For me to feel good, I'm a good enough. That's a benchmark for me as a human being. I think we try to project our dreams on our children, so that, like, I had a big dream that my daughter would be a dancer.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it's very interesting. My husband, who's a footballer most of his life, he wanted his son to play football. And he did everything, our son did everything but played football. Okay. Our daughter, I wanted her to be a dancer. Biggest dream was, she does anything, she plays football but she won't dance. Right? So it's really interesting, but you might think it's a small thing, but when you have very strong dreams about your kid, and that we invest in our things. So I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit on a tangent, but coming back to it, I think children, when they grow up with, I'm not worthy enough, so it's a cycle. We are passing it from generation to generation, that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not enough, or I don't belong, like you said. Why does land work? I think biggest thing that land work or dock works is because it gives you a sense of belonging. I've never been there, but what I get is, from what I read your book, a strong sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. We are losing that connection, right? So even when you take to drugs, like you said, it's to build that to build your community, to build your, and when you have to come out of it, also it is to build a sense of community. So I think there is a huge sense of disconnect in our present generation, all of us, and in many ways we are supposed to be very connected through social media, Facebook, whatever, but actually we are very isolated too. So that, how do I feel when I feel worthless, I feel not good enough, I am disconnected, it would lead to a high level of anxiety. It would lead to a high level of anxiety.
That requires a deep level of self-awareness first.
Very
about my own anxiety.
Absolutely.
And when I'm passing it on to my children, I'm not actually overtly stating it, but it's a subliminal messages that I'm passing on.
Absolutely. That's what I talk about. And I think we talk about how our children, we help our children grow up, but I think parenting is a lot about growing up. Our children help us grow up and to become more. If we don't, if I'm not aware of my own wounds, inadequacies or whatever, then I pass it on to my child, right? And it's so important for us to become aware somewhere, and I think that's why I use that word mindfulness. I think I'm deeply influenced by Buddhism, and I believe mindfulness is one of the core things we need to work at. Mindfulness is becoming aware of myself, my own anxiety, my own inadequacies, whatever I am, and accepting it and being very compassionate and saying, yes, that's why I said anxiety is a universal human condition. That if I struggle with anxiety, at least for me to be able to understand and accept, it's not going to go away. If I am wired to be more, the anxiety, I'm wired to be anxious, and I need to accept, be very compassionate and saying, you know what, this is it, become more mindful about it.
Okay.
And then deal with it.
Same with guilt and shame then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it becomes patterns of responses.
Absolutely. All of us, there are stories of shame that all of us carry. Stories of inadequacy, no matter how amazing our parents were or whatever, we carry that. And in this world where everybody, this fear of missing out, where we have to be better and do different things, new things, better things, best things, Obviously,
Yeah,
the anxiety is
can I
so
just
high.
add to that?
Yeah,
I think it's a bit of a, I mean, it's overdone that we blame tech for everything, you know.
Yeah.
It's all about technology, it's ruining our world. So I hate going on that line, but when you said that, you know, that feeling of I am not enough,
Yeah.
I think that when I was younger, obviously there was no such thing as, you know, there was no Google, nothing. And all you had to compare your life with was Rahul next door or, you know, Gaurav on this side, and that's it. You know, you had a row of 9 houses and that was your world. Now everyone's in Rome all the time. Everyone's in Rome, they're eating lovely food, and I really like, I don't know about young people, but I'm close to 40 and I feel very inadequate. I feel like I should be in Rome eating nice things as well, like all the time. Yeah, it does.
It's
It
very
makes me,
interesting. I read somewhere that Facebook is about I'm so happy, Twitter is about I'm so smart, and what Instagram is about I'm so hot.
ooh. I like that one.
Yeah.
Right. No, I wanted to know whether you could relate to what Shelja was saying amongst the people that you have been with at Land and maybe the other rehab places, you know. I mean, the whole sense of, have they ever spoken about the guilt and shame that maybe that's been transferred to them from their parents? Has there been any talk of parenting? How close have they been as families? What has their support been?
So, you know, of course, most of us have some issues with our parents or the other. Usually, I have to say, in 90% of the cases, with the father. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, the addictive gene is passed down from the male. So, you know, I frankly had a wonderful time. I blame my dad for everything. And I think that that's what happens. The first part of recovery is, of course, accepting responsibility for your own actions. A lot of therapy revolves around, you know, talking about our parents, about our childhoods, how we grew up to be the way we are. But I think it might be a little simplistic to say that, you know, it's not directly just passed down from your parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
People are quite, I think, I know some 22, 24-year-olds, they are very reluctant to, you know, ascribe any sort of wrongdoing to their parents. Really, they, you know, they feel like they had a good childhood, they were brought up well, they had safe environments to grow up in.
Because it was done with the best intent. I mean, I don't think there was anything
Yeah.
wrong that
Yeah.
way. The intent was good.
And there is a lot of judgment, you know, if there is a family and a child who's an addict, immediately, of course, it's the parents, right? It's the parents' fault because of that. So there's a lot of judgment around without understanding what really goes into addiction.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something.
There is, I think, a great deal of overlap, obviously, between substance abuse and anxiety. In the, you know, 2 typical ways that it happens, obviously, is that you feel anxious and you take the drugs to allay those fears or to, you know, numb yourself, or the other way around, which is that you start using drugs and you develop severe anxiety and paranoia about things that are not there, you know, bugbears. I think there's a third thing which is much rarer, which is when it co-occurs in people. And there are, I think, people at Land who face this, which is that, you know, you have an anxiety disorder and a substance abuse issue, which both need to be dealt with together, as opposed to, you know, what happens is, if I feel anxiety first, I'll go to a psychiatrist, I'll get some pills, I'll become dependent on those pills, you know, then I'll go for a substance abuse recovery program. It just doesn't seem to work when you do it piecemeal. You know, you pick up one thing.
Holistic.
Absolutely, I think, and Shelja, you know, I'm hardly an expert on this, and, you know, you can probably speak to that, but a dual diagnosis and sort of treating both together seems to be the way to go.
Yeah. See, again, without going into diagnosis so much, but really understanding that sometimes, like you said, they coexist. Drugs or, you know, like, I'll give you another example. Addiction nowadays, a lot of parents and families are concerned about internet addiction, right, in young people. I think all of us are, but we like to blame kids for it. And And many times schools will refer kids to us, internet addiction, not coming to school, all the time is in front of the laptop, will not listen to parents, not sleeping, not eating, not studying. And when we start meeting the parents or we start meeting the young person, we always find what is leading to that. Why is this child shut himself up from this world and is going into the world of internet, where this world is not giving him something that he's seeking? And we always find there's depression, there's anxiety. There could be many underlying conditions which have led, not every child, but many times addiction is just a facade. You know, behind that to really understand, so it's not about dual diagnosis for me. I would say I really need to understand, have a much more, a deeper understanding of the child and the context.
And get to the root of where the problem
root of it,
actually
I mean,
is.
of the way I work, I don't go so much into childhood and all that kind of orientation is slightly different, but really to understand what's really happening, what is the child, because the whole thing is there is something there, good enough, not being good enough, shame, whatever the child might be, or the anxiety or the depression, the child is, a person is numbing through it. The whole thing is about numbing it, right? So it could be numbing through internet, it could be numbing through alcohol, it could be numbing through drugs, it could be numbing through sex. It could be various things. You have to numb the pain somehow.
We've got limited time. Before the Q&A, I wanted to ask you, Arjun, it's time for words of wisdom now. If you
because
had to,
we've been speaking utter rubbish all this time.
No. The words of wisdom is sharing. I mean, how can someone really cope with what they're going through? You know, if there is someone in the audience, you know, who is maybe going through a program, like a rehab program, or perhaps has not even gone through, you know, but who is dealing with an addiction, what would you say from your experience? I'm not looking at an expert point of view, I'm looking from your experience.
Right.
How would you be able to reach out and tell someone as to what are the tools that they could use for this?
I don't know if this is a radical opinion, but I really feel that if someone is in that cycle of using drugs, without being sort of separated from that source for a period of time, and we're talking not a couple of weeks, 28-day programs, we're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about maybe 6 months onwards. If there is not that gap between you and the source of your addiction, you're screwed. You're going to be in that cycle for perhaps the rest of your life, because it changes the way your brain is, the wiring, it changes who you are as a person, your personality, the structure of your brain changes when you're using drugs. So this idea that I will detox for a week and then, you know, it all can go back to the way it was is nonsense. You know, it's an exercise in futility, and I really, I discourage, I know it's hard for families to come to that point where they say, you know, yes, my spouse, my parent, my child needs a rehab program. The word carries so much weight, you know, it means so much to us that is not necessarily positive, that people will try all sorts of things and sort of waste possibly years of you know, of a fantastic life by trying all this other stuff. You know, my mother, she's here looking wonderful in the front row. She's an experienced mental health professional. You know, she's you guys have known her for years, and even she reached a point where, I don't know, there was some character who she went and met, and he gave her like a ring, and I was supposed to wear the ring and throw it in the water and something. So I'm saying that you know, you're so desperate to find a solution for this that you try all sorts of quackery. So I don't know if I have any words, you know.
If someone's struggling through rehab.
Struggling through rehab?
Yeah.
Struggling through addiction.
Through addiction, yeah, sorry. And getting to rehab, coming back, it's sort of, you know, who's in the cycle of slipping back time and time again.
Right. I think what I would do is, I'd take him or her to meet my friends who are here somewhere in the audience, wherever you can smell smoke. That's where they'll be. And just have them spend an evening with us, you know. We go out and we automatically, not we, but you know, other people who have not sort of been to land, etc. It's impossible, the idea of spending an evening with friends without having at least a few drinks is bizarre. It's absolutely, you know.
So you all don't touch alcohol?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well, you know, we're not supposed to. I'm not sure about Gautam. He's sitting over there. I'm
Party
not sure.
time.
I have my doubts about him. But yeah. So just spend an evening with us, you know, and see if it's not just possible. You don't tolerate. I think that this is the thing with youngsters, right? There are friends of ours who've been to land, then been to college in the US or in England, and they feel completely out of place because everyone is just drinking and having a great time, and they really feel like, you know, they need to participate in that. So there's a, you know, things haven't turned out well in those sort of cases. But yeah, but more than that, more than the, you know, the people who are using drugs and you know, getting high, I want to talk a little bit about the people that they live with, the people in their lives, you know, the people that they love. It's really hard, I think, for people who are going through, you know, your somebody in your family, one of your close friends is going through an anxiety issue, or like a severe anxiety issue, or seems to be stuck in a cycle of drug abuse. It's a really difficult place to be in. So often we meet these people and they say, you know, how can I help? I want to help. And that helplessness, that feeling of not being able to do anything, really takes it out of you, you know. So I think there's this wonderful thing I read. It's this, it was actually about a caregiver for a cancer survivor. And, you know, she was saying that, you know, she's a qualified sort of nurse, but she was saying that aside from that stuff, aside from, you know, having to visit doctors and, you know, taking care of their diets and doing their best, this idea that you can be a strong, safe zone for your friends, for your family who are suffering. And it's this idea of holding space for them. That when they are with you, there's no, you know, get over it, what kind of stupid thing is, you're not dismissing anything, you're just there to listen and to just be there, to be a source of strength. Non-judgmental, safe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so true.
Shelja,
Yes.
in terms of parents, I'm sure I would be a very anxious parent listening that, oh my God, how can I undo, you know, any damage that I've done unwittingly? Or how can I strengthen my child, you know, again back to my child's the best, unique, supreme, all of that.
See, all of us make mistakes as parents. There's no perfect parent out there. And I think it's important if you messed up, like I did with my older one. I think we tend to make mistakes with older ones more. They are, so I told him. So he said, it's okay, Mom, I was your guinea pig, so it's okay. You know, you didn't have any practice before that. But I think more than anything, of course, first of all, I really believe in, I think, becoming more mindful. Becoming more mindful of ourselves, being in the moment, I do believe is extremely important. Along with that, like I said, acceptance of anxiety, that it's there, right? It's not going to go away. For us to say, oh, I'm going to fight it and all, it's back with a bang. So compassionate acceptance, mindfulness. I would also, my approach is as a narrative therapist, that's a particular approach I use in my work, that we separate the problem from the person. So I don't say anxious person. That's why I don't like the diagnosis and disorders, because what happens with diagnosis, it starts defining the person. He's an anxious person. He's anxious. He's a drug addict. He's anxious. He's depressed. And that becomes our identity of the person. And I think it's more about, yes, anxiety is there. Anxiety is around. So not letting it define you. So separating it out. I would always say when I talk to young people, we use metaphors, you know. I know how many of you might have seen WHO's video on depression, Black Dog, which is a beautiful, you know, the metaphor for depression. So sometimes with young people, we talk about a nagging roommate as anxiety, or a radio of doom and gloom as anxiety. You know, those kind of metaphors using that. However, more than anything else, I think taking care of yourself, you know, and it's like I like to say, life is a daily practice. If you every day find some time, I know kids don't like meditation, they hate meditation, but somewhere we could, and it can be done in such a beautiful way in schools, at home, where meditation could become just, you know, spending some time on the
point of centering yourself.
Yeah, centering yourself. I think meditation, I definitely believe in meditation or yoga. And more than anything, like Arjun was saying, I think what we need is that connection. And, you know, Arjun was talking about safe zone, and I talk about in my second book on building emotionally safe spaces, and how important it is for children to find that emotionally safe space and to find that connection, that I am accepted as I am. There's a difference between fitting in and belonging. Yeah. Acceptance, fitting in is I have to get the best grades, I have to be good in sports, I have to dress up in a particular way, listen to particular kind of music to fit in.
Alter myself to fit in.
But acceptance is that, you know, every child needs that. You're worthy as you're now. You are welcome, you're accepted as you're now. You're unique, there's nobody like you. And if we are able to build that sense of community, a sense of acceptance, I think that's the way to go forward.
I think we need to open it up for Q&A. Yeah, how much time do we have, Atul? We have 15 minutes. Great. So we've got Arjun and Dr. Shelja Sen here. Would anyone want to? Okay, there's a hand right at the back.
Yes, I have a question.
There was that young lady. Can you?
Right, sure.
You're next, sir.
So if homeless kids who are more vulnerable begin doing drugs, what would you suggest to them for them to like recover?
I'm so sorry.
Can you
yell that out?
Yeah. If homeless kids who are more vulnerable begin doing drugs, what would you suggest to them to do?
Homeless.
Yeah.
Homeless kids?
Kids on the street.
Right.
Yeah.
If they were doing drugs?
Yeah. If they, for some reason, began doing drugs.
Right.
I think you're the best person to answer that.
What?
If homeless kids, no, she's asking Arjun, I'll add to it. If homeless kids were doing drugs, what would you suggest to them?
Okay, sorry, I was going to say something absolutely flippant, callous, but okay. Unfortunately, what you're asking is a much more complicated question. There's a sense at least in the one program that's worked for me, there's a sense that in recovery you have to have a value system. You have to have a support system and a value system, and without that, recovery seems to be next to impossible. It would have to be a miracle for, I think, somebody with no support, shelter, or anything to lose, which seems to be quite important as well, to successfully recover from substance addiction. So I don't think that I would tell a homeless child who's using drugs anything, other than perhaps just to be as safe as possible while you're doing it. Harm reduction, I think. Because, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, finish that, yeah.
Because otherwise they have to be in an institution, you know, on their own, living on the streets, to develop that motivation, support, and a value system to go through a successful recovery program, I think would be really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add to that because a lot of homeless kids that we work with back in Delhi, sure survival, they've run away from home and they kind of get into, either they're around garbage dumps and they're sort of sifting through that, they're into sniffing glue. And most of the time it's to quell their hunger. It's also to fit into gangs, and I mean sometimes the gang, you have people using them, getting them addicted into hard drugs so that they can then use them to commit crime. I mean it's a very complex thing. You've picked up something, and I'm going to actually ask Amit here. Dr. Amit Sen actually works with an NGO called Salam Balak Trust in Delhi with street children. He takes care of the mental health program. Amit, very quickly, do you want to, I know we're short of time, but what would you actually, how would you answer this lady as to, it's a young girl actually.
So sure, to start with, I think I'll agree with Arjun that if we are not able to in any way impact the environment or the community that they belong to, if we are not able to actually address things like their value system, their future, their sense of family, belongingness, etc., it's very hard to begin to ask them to do something which perhaps is giving them some kind of solace in a world which is so cruel and so harmful. So to start with, I think I would say that we need to look at rehabilitative programs which are perhaps much longer and wider than just a rehab program, right? So we are looking of building these young people's lives, and that's what Salam Balak Trust and other organizations like that do, because you have to provide them that kind of a space to grow, to look at life again, to ask questions about what holds in their future. Because if you ask most children living on the streets about what do you think your, 1 month later your day is going to look like, or 1 year from now what will you do, they usually don't have any answers, because indeed they're fighting to survive day to day, hour to hour. So to be able to build a kind of a world view or a view of themselves fitting in a world which gives them meaning, respect, and a sense of belongingness has to begin at a different level altogether. And that's what we do, and some of the successful organizations who work with street children and work with addiction and so many other things that affect them deeply, emotionally, behaviorally, and so on, have to encounter. And it's complex, and I think that each child will come with their own challenges, but the infrastructure that we have to build around them has to be over a period of time. It has to be, something looking at the longer term.
Thank you, Amar. Thank you. There was that, we'll come to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ma'am, my question is, there are 4 hormones for happiness. If you know that oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and endorphin. So what are some natural ways where we can maintain those 4 hormone levels? One, and second thing is, I relate myself as an introvert, but I think rarely few people know about Susan Cain. So if you could throw some light on that, I think many people here could relate with
Cain,
that. Yes.
Quiet,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right, okay. So what you were talking about, those happy chemicals that all of us look for, the endorphin, there is much more, they're different in some certain nuances, they are very different, but I won't go into that. There are a lot of studies in terms of what really can give us, I think some of the things that I am aware of and what I've read and understand is things like having a life which gives us a sense of meaning, which could be in terms of being connected to people, being part of having deep connections, having a goal, having something which you're working towards, having a meaningful life, and also in terms of having a healthy lifestyle in terms of exercising, yoga, those kind of things, meditation. I think those are things which are supposed to build up or boost up our happy chemicals. On the other hand, what you talked about Susan Cain, I think it's a beautiful book. I wonder if you've read it. Susan Cain,
no.
She's written a most beautiful book called Quiet. I've forgotten the whole thing, but in a world that can't stop talking. And she's basically studied that, in this world, the ideal self, the ideal person that we all like to exalt is an extrovert. Everybody wants to be an extrovert who's outgoing, connects to people. Even if you see in schools, the successful people, the kids are the ones who get into the, what do you call them? Annual play, sports days, or even the top jobs, the presidents and all of them.
The councils,
student council. And for introverts to understand what introverts are like in the school level or corporate level or everyday level, and I think she has started a revolution. I would say she's a cultural revolution Susan Cain has started in understanding introverts and valuing introverts, and I love the book.
Okay, that's my next read. Yes, someone here? Yeah.
Ma'am, as someone who works in the field of psychology, I have often seen little kids who, out of any trauma, build a safe space, but as they grow, the safe space kind of changes. They adapt to what's going on. But in a lot of cases, it happens that their safe space kind of just collapses. So my question is, how do you build a safe space without actually becoming dependent on it?
Okay. that a sign?
No, no.
No, okay. Okay. So, this is actually a myth that if you provide a child an emotionally safe space, they'll become dependent on it. There are a lot of research done in the area of attachment which has shown that children who have a secure, safe attachment or feel safe, they'll explore more, right? If I feel as a child, as I'm growing up, I feel more safer, I feel more secure, I have a home I go back to, there's a consistency there, my parents are there to love me, and that community is there, I will explore more, I'll go out more. However, if I'm not very sure, if I go back home, will my mother be there or not, or if my father's an alcoholic, or you know the kind of changes and unpredictability or danger or abuse is there, then that emotionally safe space is not there. So that's a myth that emotionally safe space can cause dependence. However, sometimes yes, children do not get that emotionally safe space. And the most important thing is how we can, I think I would like to say that how can we adults, it's not just one person's responsibility, I think it's a collective responsibility for people who work with street children, for people who work in other organizations, NGOs, or you work with young people who are struggling with law, or working with schools or parents or pediatricians, whoever in any way connect with children, is how to find emotionally safe spaces, how to build, how to find, because every child who has, even in an organization like Salam Balak Trust works with street children, any person who has done well, who's become a success, you ask them what helped them, they'll say it was a community, it was somebody who had faith in me, and that's a safe space. So for us as teachers, as parents, as human beings, for us it's to provide that to our children.
Arjun, you want to add to that? Building social? Okay. We have time for one last question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a 20-year-old college student from India, so I'm clearly among the most confused individuals in this audience. My question to you, Arjun sir, is I feel that speaking on behalf of millennials and my generation, there's this desperate urge to define ourselves as distinct from the adults we've seen in our lives, be they be our parents or our educators. My question is, how can we bridge the gap between figuring out my own personal, unique identity and then also understanding the identity of others around me, especially the adults I've seen in my life?
Especially?
The adults that are around me and that have, crafted the reason why I am who I am. If that makes sense.
Okay.
You're saying that you're trying to define who you are as well as build a connection with people who you see as so different from you. My only response is give it a few years, buddy. I mean, really. I'm shocked actually. I'm so impressed that you're that self-aware. I don't think I was asking myself anywhere near these kind of questions at 24. You said?
21.
20. Wow. At 20, I was just like, where's the nearest high? So I think. So aside from congratulating you on that sort of awareness and desire to sort of connect, I would say don't. You're 20. There is, I think, too much pressure already on people your age and people similar to your age to grow up, to be more articulate, more eloquent, more intelligent, brighter, faster, quicker, better, more than other people. And you're not supposed to be that. Your natural state is to, I don't know, play Call of Duty and hang out with your buddies and just chill and fight with your parents. That's the natural progression. Let's be there. Let's be kids, for a while. Yeah, fuck the adults. I'm sorry.
No, I think what he's saying is get back a sense of play and lightness. You mentioned that in one of your books, right?
Yes,
the thing
I
of play.
I could talk about PQ, playfulness quotient. I think we're losing it. We're becoming too serious. At the age of 20, enjoy yourself. You've got the rest of your life to find out what is it that you want to do.
And I would just say that, give them the respect that you expect. Respect the difference. You don't have to be like each other at all. Do we have time for any more questions? Deepa? No? Okay. Right. Thank you so much, Arjun and Shelja. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You've been amazing.
Thank you.
I think you've left us with more questions. You've opened up a lot. What I'm taking away for myself personally is the thing of mindfulness, Shelja. Really, thank you. And Arjun, I salute your courage in baring your soul, in being vulnerable, and in being so honest.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you inspire many, many more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. You've been a great audience.
Thank you very much, Arjun Nath, Shelja Sen, and Puneeta Roy, for such a wonderful session. Can we please give them a big round of applause? And Arjun and Shelja's books are available right here, and they'll be signing it, so you can grab a copy. It's a cashless festival. We have top-up cards or credit cards. You can use either, grab a copy and get them to sign. Thank you.